Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Second Cup of Coffee. For those of you a part of Rancho Christian Youth Center, you know who this is. Next to our senior pastor, my pastor, Pastor Elver Mendenhall. He's coming in for a conversation with us regarding this bend in the river. Pastor, over the last 3 weeks, just been talking about, I'll just be honest, sometimes there's a rigidity in me about what I heard from God. Mm-hmm. This is what God said. And we talked about Agabus talking to Paul, and it was clear what he said, and he was right. He was 100% right. But we talked a little bit off camera. Let me fill you in. Pastor Elver was saying he was right, but the people who heard it took it in a different way. We don't want you to suffer. We don't want you to be separated from us. We don't want to be separated from you. Just don't go to Jerusalem. And Paul had to, being apostolic, I think, had to draw them back down and not be persuaded because he felt from God. Mm-hmm. We're not going to hash this out theologically because I just don't know. Even this, if you look at it, we probably won't know until eternity if Paul was right or Paul was wrong. What I take grace in that is this: even if Paul was wrong, God still used it and used it mightily. Mm-hmm. So, but sometimes there's a rigidity in, I'm just saying me, I'm not putting it on anybody else, a rigidity to, this is what God said, and by golly, if something else, if the door doesn't open or something else happens, you know, I'm swimming against the current, right? Trying to figure it out, trying to get my why. We're trying to get the understanding. And I forget Proverbs 3:5. Don't lean in your understanding. So what do I lean? True. Right. So what do I need to lean? I need to lean into the bend. I have to lean into the bend. So I want to just, you walked a little bit through this. You can get as personal or not as you want, but could you give us, just out of your own life and your own heart, not maybe the whole thing, but maybe a couple steps of making it through the bend, at least the initial parts? Mm-hmm. Because I think it happens for everybody. Sure. And I don't want it to fracture my faith, and I certainly don't want it to fracture other people's faith. So do you have anything just like, this is what it was, but it's bending. Mm-hmm. So now what do I do?
And there's always the potential for when there's a bend in the river for our faith to become fractured, our confidence to fall apart. How often do we say, how did this happen?
Right.
How did this go on? And we didn't talk ahead of time, so we're doing this right on camera, probably talking about my daughter.
I didn't bring it, just...
well, that's probably the most dramatic thing that's ever happened in my life is, you may not know, watching that our daughter, mine and Lori's daughter, passed away in July. In the midst of us expecting, with all of our heart, her to be healed. In fact, we're told in Scripture that if we lay hands on the sick, they will be healed. Well, we laid hands on her. Everybody else did, anointed. We did all we should do, but it didn't happen. How in the world could that bend in the river have ever happened? Mm. And it was shattering of soul, but not shattering of faith. Mm. A shattering deep within that just causes you sometimes just to moan and not be able to do anything. But here's the words that kept coming to me. It came from all directions. We have a faithful former deacon couple in Kentucky, mm-hmm. and Bonnie Kramer. Bonnie will she still sends us and many others prophetic word for the morning. Constantly came from her and from others. Trust me, we would hear God say.
Wow.
Trust me. And always the question, will you trust me? And I think about Jesus with the disciples, and it might have been when the boat's going down, I can't remember what it was, and they're freaking out, and he said, why is your faith so small? It's just incredulous to God that we wouldn't believe him and trust him.
Right.
And that has carried me around the bend, through the bend. The other side of the bend is this issue of trust.
Mm.
I trust the Lord, though I don't understand.
Right.
And when I get to heaven, and you alluded to it earlier, I've heard people say, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask God, I got some questions for him. When I get to heaven, I'm going to be grabbing his ankles because it's going to be a wonder that I made it.
Yeah, right.
Because he knows me.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, I got nothing.
And don't take that too far. We're secure in our salvation, but there is that element of knowing I live with me all the time. Mm-hmm. Anyway, go ahead.
So I don't know if I answered that. Just for Lori and for I, working through this stuff, is trusting God. You cannot trust God, though. Frankly, you can't make it around the bend if you do not have a solid, secure relationship with Him. We're secure in Him. We know who we are, but that I'm not saying at all that we didn't weep, we didn't ask questions, we, like anybody else, asked the why thing.
Right, sure.
And it's shaking. It shakes a father, me, but it really shakes a mother. It really shakes a mother. And I know with Lori, walking through this bend has been particularly hard. It's been hard for both of us, but it's harder for a mother.
Yeah.
And we come back to who we know, our trust in God. How about this, walking through the bend? We have all these scriptures that talk about lay hands on the sick and they'll recover. Right. I continue to preach healing. People come up to have hands laid on them. I remember speaking to Apostle Dave. I'm having a little trouble praying for the sick based upon what we've gone through. And he says, you've got to throw away your experience and lay hold of the truth you know of the Word.
Wow.
And that has helped see us through.
You made a mention of something that your soul can shatter, but your spirit can stay strong. And I think that's where I lose perspective. Because my emotions are, and I didn't walk through, and I haven't walked through anything like what you walk through. So I look from the outside and go, I don't know. I don't know that I could. You hope, right? I hope that the hope is the anchor of my soul and it's going to keep me, but what did you do to kind of continue to buoy your spirit up rather than let it get kind of sucked into this vortex of everything just shattering? And, I know you, and I think I know some of the answers, but I think hearing from you, because it's your testimony, what do you do to keep your spirit anchored? If I could say it that way.
No, that's a good way of putting it. I think of the old hymn, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. My hope is anchored. If I did not have this relationship with Him, I do not know what I would be or how we would be. One of the things to keep going, how you make it through, is keep doing the stuff you've been doing.
Wow.
I and our congregation knows I beat the drum about being in the Word every day. They probably roll their eyes every time I say it.
By this point, they're waving their Bible counters. I get it.
I'm doing it. But I kept doing that.
Yeah.
Lori kept doing that in the midst of her tears, in the midst of the brokenness. We kept feeding the things that grow faith.
That's good.
If you don't do that, if you just quit doing that, if you just go off, you have nothing except your pain. And here, when you're spending time with God, we kept coming to church week after week. I didn't the first week. It was the day after, because I couldn't face I couldn't face anything.
Yeah.
I did go to the church down the street because I needed something.
Oh, okay.
But they didn't know me, so that was okay.
Right. Yeah.
But we continued coming week after week, and I remember I would try to put my arm around Lori in the midst of worship because she'd be weeping. And she says, no, just let me be. This is my time with Him, and He's doing something in me. So we kept worshiping. We kept hearing the Word. I kept taking notes on whoever was sermonizing, whoever's preaching. And then I was preaching regularly too.
Yeah.
Because there's a truth that we know that even in spite of what we've experienced, when that truth and our experience don't line up, I weep over my experience, but I hold on to the truth.
That's the gold right there. Grab that. I weep over my experience. Nobody's not telling you not to mourn it and pretend like it didn't happen and pretend like this hurt. That's religion, and it's not going to get you anywhere. That can kill your faith as quick as unbelief can.
That's so true.
So feel free to mourn it, but don't let go of your relationship, the thing of Jesus. And so I want to end with this because you may not see it as much as I see it. Because of your willingness, and I see it with your wife, Lori, watching God move through you now in a different dynamic. Now that's, again, I don't want to, it's not because of but it is because of. It's not because of what happened with Becky, but it's because of how they chose to go through the bend. I'm just got to be honest with you in that regard. I'm not going to give a story out of their life, but I'll give a story out of Dick Mills. Prophet has gone on to be with the Lord.
Right.
He was a young man, and his first wife passed away. Prayed for her to be healed, prayed for her, all of these things, and she passes away. And he took like a year of grieving, and I think at some point he told God, he's like, God, I'll do anything you want me to do, but I'm not praying for the sick. I'm not going to do it. And he comes to a church, I believe it's in San Bernardino, if I have the story right. This woman is in Orange County. This has got to be, probably the 60s.
Oh, yeah, at least.
Yeah, so she hears from God, if you get to Dick Mills' service, I'll heal you. Terminally ill.
Wow.
And he's like, I'm not praying for the sick. And so end of the service, she waits out everybody, and she goes, and he's like, I'm not praying for you. And the guy got a hold of his heart, and he prayed for her, and she was healed instantly.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
You may say, why do you share that? Because honestly, at the end of all these weeks, 4 weeks, we don't always understand the bent.
That's right.
We don't understand his ways. And when we did talk a few days ago, there's something that just grips my heart, Pastor. Often when we go through a situation, I feel like my understanding is the biggest portion, and then my trust in God is the smallest part. Or,
Right.
And it's got to be flipped.
Yeah, we have it backwards.
Because I won't ever understand him. But then there is a smallest part is my understanding. Going back to Dick, he eventually got married to most of you, if you were around his minute, Betty. Wonderful marriage, married for like 50 years, I think it was. And I know his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren and the legacy goes on. Do I understand the tragedy? No. Do I understand those things? What I do understand out of that story is it was a man who chose to continue in the relationship and to remain obedient to God.
That's right.
I see it in our pastor. I see it in that as well, and I see God moving through him and Pastor Lori. So if this means something to you, please share it, or share it to somebody that you may feel get some benefit out of it. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on our app. Wherever you find us, we appreciate that you do. We love you, and God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pastor Tom.
We will talk to you soon.